right. As always, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. The Crested Butte Mountain Heritage Museum is thrilled to have participated in this great series with you, Duane. So thank you, Duane, for being here once again. If you'd like to make a donation to not only support this program, but also a scholarship for a local student that goes to the Vandenbushe Education Scholarship, visit crestedbuttemuseum.com, or you could always give us a call at the museum, 970-349-1880, to ask about it and to find out more. But any donations made to this program go to both supporting this work as well as supporting that scholarship for a student. Please consider becoming a member of the museum. Your memberships go towards not only supporting programming, but also making sure we can take care of our collections, creating exhibitions, put on all kinds of other programming, and so many more fun things. Members also get 10% off in the museum store, along with many other benefits. This video is being recorded. You can find all of the recordings at crestedbuttemuseum.com. We've got them all there on our homepage, and that will take you to our YouTube page, where you can also find a lot of fun other videos all about local history. We are continuing walking tours. We got enough interest. It was going to end last week, but we are continuing the walking tours because it's so gosh dang nice out through the end of October. So that's every Tuesday and Thursday morning at 9 a.m. and then again at 3 p.m. on Saturdays. Closed captioning will be available during the PowerPoint. So once the PowerPoint is up and running, you'll see that closed captioning going. Also, we have programming coming up after Duane is done with his series. We're continuing every Thursday night at 7 o'clock with the History at Home series. Every week is a different speaker and a different topic, all about local history and Colorado history. To kick us off, we have Marketa, I'm going to just ruin this name, Zubkova. She is an immigration lawyer living in Gunnison who does work with the Koch community, which is an indigenous group out of Mexico. So she's going to be talking about a little bit about their history and the community that lives in the Gunnison Valley. After that, we've got Dr. Heather Thiessen Riley, and she'll be talking about Dia de los Muertos and the history of that as well. So those are just the first two coming up at the History at Home series. It's also free. We do love donations, of course. So go to crestedbuttemuseum.com to learn more about that and to register for that series as well. All right, Duane, you want to take it away?
Thank you, Nell. And thanks to everybody on board. This has been great. We've had 420 people registered. And next week will be my last presentation, and that'll be on Western State College. We got a lot of alums out there, and I think you'll find it pretty interesting. This is my 15th one for the museum, so next week will be 16. And then I need a little break because my next project is going to be doing 10 podcasts for History Colorado as part of my duties as state historian. And they will be about 25 or 30 minutes, and they'll be all on different topics than I've covered with the museum. I want to also ask everybody a little personal favor. You've been very kind in getting scholarship money in for a needy person. When I started out in Michigan's Upper Peninsula as a young kid, the Belgian farmers, my dad and grandfather came from Belgium, always said, give the boy or girl a start. So we've got a lot of needy people in the Gunnison Country, especially people who have come from different countries, and they could really use the money to get them going at least the first year at Western State. So I hope that you can contribute. Some of you high rollers throw a lot of money in. Today, we are talking about the western slope of Colorado. So the western slope of Colorado, the western 1/3 of the state, that is separated from the eastern slope by the snaking Continental Divide. Any of the rivers heading off the divide and flowing west make their way to the Gulf of Mexico, or to the Gulf of California and or the Pacific Ocean. Any flowing east wind up in the Mississippi River and eventually into the Gulf of Mexico. The western slope, 33% of the land area of Colorado, 10% of the population, and 70% of the water. And therein lie many tales of woe. The water is where the people ain't, and the people ain't where the water is, and that's been a great problem. Arnold Toynbee, a great English historian, once said that, and I'm quoting, geography is the great lever of history. He believed that the mountains, the elevation, the water, the lack of water, cold, snow, all determines history. And that certainly has been true on the western slope. Now the Continental Divide, which snakes about 300 miles north to south from Wyoming all the way into New Mexico, and it separates the western slope from the rest of Colorado. The great historian David Lavender said that it resembles an abused crankshaft along the way. Soon after it comes out of Wyoming, the divide goes over Rabbit Ears Pass near Steamboat Springs and heads near where the Colorado River starts off Milner and Poudre Passes in Rocky Mountain National Park. From there, the divide turns south and go over Rollins Pass with the Moffat Tunnel underneath it, and Middle Park with towns like Fraser and Grand Lake and Hot Sulphur Springs on the western slope. From there, the divide continues southwest with Clear Creek Canyon on the east slope, along with the great mining towns of Central City, Black Hawk, and Georgetown. The divide then goes over Berthoud Pass and then over Loveland Pass, or through the Eisenhower Tunnel, with Frisco, Silverthorne, Copper Mountain, Vail, all on the western slope. South, it then goes over Hoosier Pass with Breckenridge on the western slope and Fairplay and South Park on the eastern slope. Then it's over Fremont Pass with Leadville on the east, and then over Independence Pass with Aspen on the west. From there, the divide meanders south over Monarch Pass with the Gunnison Country and Taylor Park to the west, and Salida and Buena Vista to the east. Then the Continental Divide makes a big swing to the west and goes over one of the lowest and easiest passes to cross in the early days, Cochito Pass at 10,032 feet in elevation. The divide now goes all the way west to Stony Pass at 12,500 feet, and it goes way out that way to pick up the headwaters of the Rio Grande River, with all the great San Juan mining towns like Lake City and Ouray and Silverton and Telluride on the west slope, and the great San Luis Valley on the east slope. Then the divide swings back to the east and goes over Wolf Creek Pass and finishes its Colorado journey by going into New Mexico. Many say that the western slope is a state of mind as much as it is a place. It is always spelled with a capital W and S, unlike the eastern slope with a small e and a small s. The people of western Colorado feel that they've been shaped and hardened by the numbing cold, the heavy snow, the high elevation, and the rugged terrain. The land has shaped them. Arthur Chapman, a long time ago in 1888, writing for the Denver Post, came out with a line that went something like this: "Bring me men to match my mountains. Bring me men to entertain. Men with empires in their brains." And then Chapman also wrote another great work called Out Where the West Begins. I'll give you a paragraph. Out where the hand clasp is a little stronger. Out where the smile dwells a little longer. That's where the West begins. Out where the sun is a little brighter, where the snows that fall are a trifle whiter, where the bonds of home are a wee bit tighter. That's where the West begins. The western slope has always been a special place and of immense importance to the history of Colorado. Its magnificent scenery highlighted by 20 14,000-foot high peaks, great canyons like the Black and the Uncompadre, spectacular rivers like the Colorado, the Green, the Yampa, and the Gunnison, some of the finest ski areas in the world like Aspen, Vail, and Steamboat, and hundreds of once great mining towns, all have led to a many billions of dollars tourist industry. Most of western Colorado was known only to a few Native Americans, Spanish explorers, mountain men, and placer miners until the mid-1870s. Three things had to happen before the western slope really opened. First, you had to have mineral discoveries that came in the San Juan. Second involved the removal of the Ute Indians. And third, railroads for transportation had to be built. There are a number of characteristics, many geographic, that have influenced Western Colorado through the years. One is that the extreme western part of the western slope is barren, desolate, and arid, highlighted by Mesa Verde, the Paradox Valley, the Uncompahgre Plateau, the Flat Top Wilderness, and Dinosaur National Monument. Even though the western slope averages only 11 inches of rain a year, it is a tremendous water producer because of the enormous runoff of snow turning to water during the spring of the year. Western Colorado's population is 540,000 or so, and it's concentrated in urban pockets like Grand Junction and Montrose, Durango, Glenwood Springs, Frisco, Vail, and Steamboat. The area is famous for its heavy snow and cold weather. Gunnison and Fraser vie for the Cold Spot in the Nation award every year. And I'm going to tell you how cold it gets in Gunnison. This is something I got out of the newspaper a number of years ago. So the topic is just how cold does it get in Gunnison? So here we go. 60 degrees. Floridians turn on the heat. People in Gunnison plant gardens. 50 degrees. Californians shiver uncontrollably. People in Gunnison sunbathe. 40 degrees. Italian and English cars won't start. People in Gunnison drive with the windows down. 32 degrees. Distilled water freezes. The water in Gunnison gets thicker. 20 degrees. Floridians don coats, thermal underwear, gloves, and wool hats. People in Gunnison throw on a flannel shirt. 15 degrees. New York landlords finally turn up the heat. People in Gunnison have the last cookout before it gets cold. 0. People in Miami all die. People in Gunnison close windows. 10 below 0. Californians all fly away to Mexico. People in Gunnison get out their winter coats. 25 below 0. Hollywood disintegrates. The Girl Scouts in Gunnison sell cookies door to door. 40 below 0. Washington, D.C. runs out of hot air. People in Gunnison let dogs sleep indoors. 100 degrees below 0. Santa Claus abandons the North Pole. People in Gunnison get frustrated because the minivan won't start. 160 degrees below 0. All atomic motion stops. People in Gunnison say, cold enough for you? 500 below 0. Hell freezes over. The Gunnison public schools are closed. That gives you an idea of Gunnison and Fraser vying for the Cold Spot in the Nation award every year. In 1961, the Taylor Reservoir recorded an official minus 61 below, and that was beaten by Maybell in northwestern Colorado in 1985 with minus 62 below. The high mountain areas get tremendous snows during the winter. It's not uncommon for the Wolf Creek ski area to get more than 500 inches of snow, with other ski areas getting 300 or more. The western slope is also characterized by very high and rugged passes, many of which are closed in the winter. Some of the toughest that are not open year-round are the toughest in the nation: Black Bear, Imogene, Engineer, Cinnamon, Independence, Cottonwood, and Stony. Time in western Colorado is measured, replaces distance. If one asks in Gunnison, how far is it to Denver, as I did as a young prof here in 1962, Gene Grary said 4 hours. And I said, Gene, no, how many miles is it? And he said 4 hours, because distance doesn't matter out here. What does matter is how many passes are you going over and what are the weather conditions. Many of the passes have been so difficult that tunnels have been built under them or near them, including the Eisenhower and Johnson tunnels on I-70, which eliminates Loveland Pass, and the Moffett Tunnel under Rollins Pass. In the 1880s, the Denver and South Park Railroad built the Alpine Tunnel at 11,523 feet under Altman Pass. Throughout its history, the Western Slope is dependent upon extractive industries like the mining of coal and silver and gold and moly and marble, and drilling major oil wells or being involved in the timber industry, all extracting things from the earth. That led to the area to be very conservative in its politics early. However, with the great increase in population and people arriving from other states, the Western Slope today has gotten more liberal, and it's not so much a red or Republican area today, but rather it's kind of purple. It's kind of independent. Silver opened the Western Slope with great discoveries in the mid-1870s. And in the San Juan, great towns like Ouray, Telluride, Silverton, and Lake City were laid out. And there you got a great shot of Lake City in 1882. Soon, thousands of miners flocked in, many of them with shady pasts, and they joined rich investors, railroads, and smelters not far behind. And one of my favorite songs was sung by Debbie Reynolds about miners coming in. And she sung this song in How the West Was Won. And it's called What Was Your Name in the States? What was your name in the States? Now you must have had some honest traits. Did you try to abscond with a beautiful blonde? Such minor offenses we tolerates. Oh, what was your name in the States? What was your name in the East? And how recently was you released? Are you riding the rails because you held up the males? Or was it the females you held, you beast? Oh, what was your name in the East? Oh, what was your name in the States? Though you suffered the cruelest of fates. Way out here in the West, everybody's a guest. So line up and fill up your plates, my friend, whoever you are in the States. The San Juan and the Western Slope had gold along with silver, and Breckenridge at 9,645 feet was one of the great camps that opened as early as 1861. In the late 1870s, prospectors crossed the divide over Independence Pass from Leadville and from Crested Butte over East Maroon and Pearl Passes to a new mining camp called Aspen. With great mines like the Molly Gibson, 3,300 ounces of silver to the ton, and the Smuggler, which produced the greatest silver nugget in history, 2,060 pounds and 93% pure silver. Aspen soon became the #1 silver town in the world with a population of 15,000 people. The major problem Aspen had in its first decade until 1887 was the lack of a railroad. Silver ore was carried out on the backs of 500 burros over East Maroon Pass at 12,400 feet to the nearest railhead at Crested Butte. And then those burros would be loaded with supplies and headed back to Aspen. The arrival of the narrow gauge Denver and Rio Grande in 1887 was a red letter day at Aspen. At a party welcoming the railroad, James Downing rose to make the following toast. Then here's to our Aspen, our youth and our age. We welcome the railroad, say farewell to the stage. And whatever our lot, and wherever we be, here's God bless forever, the DNRG. Aspen's mine produced over $100 million worth of silver at $1 an ounce. Today in 2020, that would equal by today's prices $1.8 billion. During its heyday, the great silver town had 10 daily passenger trains, 6 newspapers, 40 saloons, and 25 great silver mines. It also had the Hotel Jerome, and the Wheeler Opera House, both built by millionaire Jerome Wheeler in the late 1880s. The silver panic of 1893 marked the end of Aspen as one of the great towns of the West. The population plummeted to 750. Mines closed, smelters shut down, and trains stopped running. Aspen languished until the 1940s, when it revived as a great ski town. Around the same time that Aspen was booming, another town about 11 miles up Castle Creek, Ashcroft, also had some great mines. But most of the people went down to Aspen because the great mines were closer there. But in the 1930s, a guy named Ted Ryan and a good friend named Billy Fisk opened up a Highland Lodge, and they began to bring skiers up to ski off Mount Hayden. Had to hike up Highland Bowl. Later on, a guy named Stuart Mace came in, and he ran sled dogs for about 50 years. And his sled dogs were used in the TV series Sergeant Preston of the Yukon. Today, there are 4 ski areas in Aspen: Ajax, Highlands, Snowmass, and Buttermilk. The population is 5,000. The Hotel Jerome has been renovated at a cost of $5 million, and the town is known worldwide. The western slope has always been characterized by 5 separate and distinct regions: the Gunnison Country, the San Juan, the Uncompadre Country, Northwestern Colorado, and the Colorado River Country. The Gunnison Country is dominated by 2 towns, Gunnison and Crested Butte, and by the Gunnison River, a major tributary of the Colorado, which it joins at Grand Junction. The area went through a silver mining boom in the 1880s, with camps like Tin Cup and Irwin and Gothic and Pitkin and White Pine, but it never really had the high-grade ore of the San Juan. It turned instead to what I call the 3 C's and the Big T. The 3 C's were cattle, coal, and college, and the Big T was tourism. By 1900, there were 300 cattle ranches in the Gunnison Country, with 40,000 cows and 10,000 horses, one of the great cattle regions of the West. In 1949, at his dispersal sale, Dan Thornton, one of the ranchers who would soon be elected Colorado governor and serve 2 terms, sold 2 bulls for $50,000 each. The Gunnison Country was known for having the best bred cattle in the nation. The Ford Motor Company made a documentary movie about Gunnison cattle ranching, and it was called The American Cowboy. Coal, however, was the economic driver of the region. Crested Butte had 9 coal mines in and around the town, and 154 coke ovens, with the big mine the 3rd largest in the state. Those coke ovens provided coke, which, along with limestone from the Monarch Quarry just east of Monarch Pass and molten iron, came together in a blast furnace at the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company steel mills in Pueblo to convert iron into steel and power the United States Industrial Revolution after the Civil War. Mining in Crested Butte, like other coal towns, was dangerous. And on January the 24th, 1884, seeping methane gas blew up the Jokerville mine, killing 61 miners, the 3rd worst mining disaster in Colorado history. The 3C was the college. Beginning in 1911 as Colorado Normal, a 2-year school for the training of teachers, it changed to a 4-year school in 1923, Western State College, the first college on the western slope. One of the faculty members, John C. Johnson of the biology department, created the Rocky Mountain Biological Laboratory in Gothic, 35 miles from Gunnison, in 1928. It still exists today and is one of the top scientific labs in the nation, doing pioneering studies on climate change. And the big T was tourism. 2 million visitors come to the Gunnison Country every year to see the spectacular Black Canyon, ski at Crested Butte, ride some of the best mountain biking trails in the nation along with Moab, Utah, climb the high mountains, and visit the Blue Mesa Reservoir, the largest body of water in Colorado and the second biggest tourist attraction in the state behind Rocky Mountain National Park. The Uncompahgre Country is another wonder on the western slope. That region is bordered by Ridgeway in the south, Grand Junction in the north, and Utah in the west. It is dominated by the Uncompahgre River, which heads near the peak of the same name. The huge Uncompahgre Plateau between Montrose and Grand Junction, and the rich Uncompahgre Valley, watered by Gunnison River water, flowing through the 6-mile-long Gunnison Tunnel and making the towns of Montrose, Delta, and Olathe survive because they're running out of water before the Gunnison Tunnel in 1909. The Uncompahgre Country has Grand Mesa, the largest table mountain in the U.S., located between Cedar Ridge in the North Fork Valley and Grand Junction. Over 10,000 feet, 300 lakes, provides 58,000 acre-feet of water for 7 towns. Another geological wonder is the Colorado National Monument, just west of Grand Junction. Its rugged rock formations are the result of buckling, twisting, wrinkling of its surface, helped out by erosion. The largest town of the western slope is in the Uncompahgre Valley, and that's Grand Junction, 63,000 people. 100,000 people live in the immediate area: Palisade, Clifton, Fruita, Mac, and Loma. From its start in 1881, Grand Junction had it all. Plenty of water from the Gunnison and Colorado rivers, mild climate, rich soil, a railroad by the 1880s, and with rich fruit orchards nearby on many of the mesas and in Palisade and Fruita. 19 miles south, where the Uncompahgre River empties into the Gunnison, Delta began in 1881, also with fertile farms and cattle ranches along with fruit raising. It also had sugar refining and was nearby coal mines in Somerset, and also raised a lot of honey. Now you're looking at a threshing machine, and I'm going to take a personal moment out. I grew up on a farm in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, and we had a threshing machine, an old Bell City, and I always wish we would have kept it. And the threshing machine separated the straw from the grain. And there it is. It took my dad and I 1 hour to grease and oil the machine and take care of 37 belts, some of which were shifting. So the old Bell City threshing machine would be a collector's item today and probably worth a lot of money, but nobody knew that at the time. The billionaire Bill Koch has a magnificent old west town nearby on the Kebler Pass Road between Paonia and Crested Butte, and not far from today's Erickson Springs. Also in the Uncompahgre Valley is the Paradox Valley and the town of Nucla. Nearby is Gateway, a beautiful town built up by Discovery Channel billionaire John Hendricks, who has one of the top auto collections in the world there. The Paradox Valley was the scene of a wild uranium boom from 1948 into the early 1960s. The excitement was a byproduct of the new atomic age and the Cold War. The Atomic Energy Commission developed a major program for uranium exploration, bringing in miners reminiscent of the gold and silver days. Thousands of them came in. The Atomic Energy Commission had its office in Grand Junction, and more than 100 companies were based there. Uravan, which no longer exists, became a booming town, and in place of the burro, the mining pan, the pick and shovel of gold and silver days came jeeps, low-flying airplanes, and Geiger counters. Thousands of uranium miners came in. $175 million of uranium ore was mined, and it all ended when the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty was signed in the early 1960s and the Cold War cooled down. And now the San Juan, 15,000 square miles in the southwestern part of the state, and one of the most beautiful areas in the world. With its high mountains and deep canyons, the region was a natural for gold and silver mines. Beginning in the 1870s, thousands of miners flocked in, creating boom towns with names like Lake City, Ouray, Telluride, Silverton, Animas Forks, and many more. Telluride, Silverton, and Ouray, by today's prices, produced $20 billion of silver and gold. When the silver panic of 1893 hit, they kept right on mining into the 1970s because they also had gold and zinc and lead and copper. Before railroads came burros, and the burros kept the mining going. Hundreds of them with 200 pounds of ore on their back, taking ore to the ends of railroad track and then returning with supplies. And I'll put a little plug in for P. David Smith, who has written a terrific book called On the Backs of Burros. And anybody who doesn't know a whole lot about the burro ought to read that, because without those burros, mines would never really have made it early in the history of the Western Slope. Telluride, 54 aerial trams, taking ore from the mines at high elevation to mills down below. Beautiful Bridal Veil Falls at the head of the San Miguel River, dropping 365 feet just east of town. The legend. A guy gets married. He and his wife are up at the head of the falls. She's got her bridal veil on. He's trying to impress her. He walks out on a plank. A lot of mist has hit the plank. He falls, makes one dying grasp of the bridal veil, and goes down 365 feet. Hence the name Bridal Veil Falls. At nearby Ames, about 5 miles out of Telluride, where two forks of the San Miguel River came together, Louis Nunn found a new way to power his Gold King mine, 12,500 feet in elevation. Nikola Tesla, the most brilliant man in the history of electricity, and George Westinghouse, who had developed a new motor, were the two men who came up with the first use of alternating current electricity in history. They put a water wheel in the shack at Ames where those two forks of the San Miguel came together. They belted a generator to it, strung lightweight copper wire on top of wooden towers from Ames to the Gold King mine, and then power surged at 186,000 miles a second to George Westinghouse's alternating current motor at the mine. Unlike direct current of Thomas Edison, alternating current could be run long distances. The great mines of Telluride were the Tomboy, the Smuggler, the Liberty Bell, the Alta Lakes, and the Black Bear. Today, Telluride has the only gondola of its kind in the US, taking people in 13 minutes from Telluride Village into the Telluride town, or vice versa, and it's free. It's not a chairlift, it is that gondola. 18 miles from Telluride as the crow flies, over 13,114 foot high Imogene Pass, is the spectacular town of Ouray. Located at the start of the $1 Million Highway, which runs over Red Mountain Pass, 23 miles to Silverton, Ouray has often been called the Switzerland of America, the Queen Jewel of the San Juan, and the Opal of the Mountains. The $1 Million Highway, and there you can see the train, the mule wagons taking wagons over the highway. The $1 Million Highway was so named because when built in 1884, it was thought that for every mile of the road, one covered up $1 million worth of ore. The great mines of Uray included the Wheel of Fortune in the shadows of nearby Mount Sneffels, the legendary Camp Bird of Thomas Walsh, which turned out hundreds of millions of dollars of gold and silver up Canyon Creek, the Yankee Girl, and the Guston. The famous Beaumont Hotel opened up its mahogany doors in 1886, one of the great hotels of the Western Slope. After a $5 million restoration, it still remains. One of the most famous papers in Colorado existed in Uray from 1879 to 92, the Solid Muldoon, named after a prize ring hero of the New York stage. The owner was David Day from Cincinnati and a great hero of the Civil War. He was honest and scathing as a reporter. He once had 42 lawsuits against him, none of which he lost. He became well known when he lamented the death of a 31-year-old prostitute named Charlotte in an epitaph on the front page of the Solid Muldoon. Charlotte, born a virgin, died a harlot. For 14 years she kept her virginity, a damn good record in this vicinity. Uray's mines produce billions by today's standards, and it remains one of the most beautiful towns in the nation, with world-class ice climbing, the very unique Box Canyon, a stunning amphitheater with alpenglow at night, and beautiful Victorian homes. And then there is Silverton, deep in southwest Colorado, and there it is at 9,318 feet on the Animas River, the last great mining camp of the San Juan. 3 narrow gauge railroads owned by the pathfinder of the San Juan, Otto Mears, tried to bridge the 23 miles from Silverton to Uray, but never made it. The Uncompadre Canyon, right going into Uray, 6 miles away from Uray, stopped them. The famous Sunnyside Mine, and you're looking at it, up the Animas, a few miles from Silverton, had one of the few 100 stamp mills in the nation, 4 stories high. The Silver Lakes and the Highland Mary were other great mines. Silverton's mines had closed, and the town was down on its luck in 1958, when the Catholic Church there decided to put up a 12-foot high marble statue of Jesus Christ, Christ of the Mine Shrine, overlooking the town. The marble came from Italy, and you're looking at it. As soon as the shrine was in place, Standard Metals reopened the Mayflower Mill just east of Silverton, and mining began again. Perhaps a miracle. Mining continued into the 1970s. Then, in 1981, Charlie Bradshaw of Texas began running the Durango to Silverton narrow gauge train through the beautiful Animas River Canyon, 45 miles into Silverton. And there it is. Today, 200,000 people a year ride that train, giving a terrific boost to the Silverton economy. And then in the San Juan country is Durango, 6,512 feet high on the Animas River, the 3rd largest town on the western slope, with great access to the desert and great access to the mountains. Durango is a mecca for tourists. During the great mining towns of the San Juan, Durango was the #1 railroad, smelter, and supply town for all the nearby mining camps. And now we come to Northwestern Colorado, and there is the Hayden Survey in 1870, looking over the area, the great area of Northwestern Colorado. Historically, it was cattle country, with Steamboat Springs the #1 shipping point for cattle in the United States by the year 1900. Soon, however, coal became king, and Northwest Colorado became one of the top coal producers in the nation. Most of the coal was strip mined, with drag lines doing the stripping. The most famous drag line is one called Effie, which cost $10 million in the 1970s. Now, before I go on with coal, there's a great shot near Craig of women doing the branding. And I'm here to tell you that one of my podcasts for History Colorado is going to be on women, because I know my dad worked very hard on the farm, but compared to my mother, he wasn't even close. And women did most of the work in the American West and got the least of the credit. The most famous drag line, as I said, was called Effie, which cost $10 million in the 1970s around Craig. It has a boom 325 yards long and a bucket which lifts out 55 yards of coal per bite. Effie is 5 stories high. Northwest Colorado also became well known for its Rangeley oil fields, which began to turn out that black gold in the 1920s. In 1963, Northwest Colorado moved into the age of snow also, with the opening of the Steamboat Springs ski area. When Steamboat native and Olympic skier Buddy Werner, and there you can see Buddy skiing with Chamonix in the background in the early 1960s, when he died in an avalanche in Europe in 1964, the name of the ski area in Steamboat was changed to Mount Werner. The final geographic area on the western slope is the area dominated by the Colorado River and its tributaries. It includes Breckenridge, on a river the Ute Indians called the Na-Un-Kara, or where the River of the Blue rises. Breckenridge became one of the top gold camps in Colorado and went through a placer, load, and dredging era. Oddly, the camp was never part of the United States until 1936, because in all the purchases of land by the U.S., a 1,300 square mile region, including Breckenridge, had not been included. So, in 1936, amidst much fanfare, Colorado Governor Ed Johnson took control of that foreign territory. And there goes a train through Gore Canyon in northwestern Colorado. Along Gore Creek, and not far from Frisco or Climax, Vail opened as a ski village in 1962, discovered by a local rancher, Earl Eaton, and a 10th Mountain veteran, Pete Seibert. Vail became the first ski area to keep auto traffic out of the village and to build condominiums. One expansion after another came, and today Vail is famous for its powder bowls, Sun Up, Sundown, Game Creek, and Inner and Outer Mongolia, and others. President Gerald Ford had a home there, and Vail today has become an international resort with over 1 million skiers a year enjoying the snow. Between Leadville and Vail is Camp Hale, home of the 10th Mountain Ski Division, established in 1942 just off Tennessee Pass. 14,300 men trained there, and over 900 died in the mountains of Italy and Austria during World War II. When the men got a little free time, they got maybe a 3-day pass, they would go to Aspen, and they would ski on the boat tow, and they would sleep on the floor of the Hotel Jerome. And to stay warm, they would drink a drink with 7 shots of bourbon and a thick chocolate malt shake mixed together called Aspen Crud. And they said they never got cold. And they also had a great drinking song that went something like this. If I can pick it out. There are systems and theories of skiing, but one thing I surely have found: skiing's just good in the winter. Drinking's good all year around. When many of the 10th Mountain Division members came back, they came back to Colorado, a place they loved, and they opened up ski areas. Bob Parker and Pete Seibert opening Vail, and Chuck Lewis at Copper Mountain. From Grand Lake on the west side of Rocky Mountain National Park to Berthoud Pass in the south is beautiful Middle Park, dotted by beautiful small cattle, lumber, and ski towns. Fraser, along with Gunnison, ranks among the coldest towns in the nation. Winter Park is the home to a great ski area, is on the west side of the 6-mile-long Moffett Railroad and Water Tunnel. The Winter Park ski trains leave Union Station in Denver during the winter months, and they come to Winter Park. And Lim leave at the end of the ski day and returns to the station. There is a photographer photographing people on Grand Lake in the 1880s. Glenwood Springs, at the junction of the Colorado River with the Roaring Fork, is another spectacularly beautiful town, home to the famed Hotel Colorado and the place where gunfighter Doc Holliday is buried. Glenwood has one of the top hot springs in the nation. Teddy Roosevelt often came to that area to hunt. And one day, when one of his party was going to shoot a little bear cub, Teddy Roosevelt knocked the gun away. And that's how the expression Teddy Bear came to be today. So there is the western slope of Colorado, where 70% of the state's water is, where billions of gold and silver has been mined, where chugging narrow gauge railroads ran, where some of the finest coal in the nation was mined, where marble was used for the Lincoln Memorial and the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, where the first great Bureau of Reclamation project came, the Gunnison Tunnel, where world-class ski areas like Vail and Aspen and Copper Mountain and Steamboat, Telluride, Crested Butte, and Beaver Creek exist, where the mighty Colorado River flows, where rugged mountains rise over 14,000 feet, and with a great history in mining, cattle, skiing, and railroads. A fantasy land, a state of mind, the western slope, the most important region in all of Colorado. And that's it. I hope anybody now can get to the chat room. Anybody has any questions, I will attempt to answer. Nell has put up, want to learn more about the Ute history. That's great. Check out the American Cowboy documentary is great. Any other questions or comments on the chat board? I'm available. This was wide-reaching, of course. Catherine Keller, have you visited the Koch Western town? Yes, I have. I know Bill Koch pretty well, and I gave a talk at West Palm Beach where he has his home, and his home is a tremendous museum. How about St. Elmo, said Tempe. Well, Tempe, St. Elmo's on the eastern slope. It's right on the other side of the Alpine Tunnel, so I can't cover it. Any other questions? Incidentally, Bill Koch, you might be interested to know, is 6'5", played basketball for MIT, where he got a PhD in engineering, and he's a pretty nice guy. He's not a political guy like his brothers are, and he's got a lot of good charities. Steve Toth, any information about forest fires in the late 1800s? Yes, indeed. The newspapers would have a lot of information on fires, but they didn't pay them much mind because there weren't very many people then, and the fires very rarely even got close to towns because everybody had clear-cut the timber for mine props, for railroad ties, and log cabins. And that was a natural way. The fires then weren't as serious as they are now because you didn't have a whole lot of people living where they probably shouldn't be living. Yeah, Liz Campbell. Liz, I will have, when the podcasts come out for History Colorado, I'll tell you right now, Marie Scott, Florence Sabin, Josephine Roach, Aunt Kate Fisher, are all going to be some of the women's that we cover. Any other comments or chats?
In the Q&A, Susan Sweetra asks, do they ever open up the Old West Town for visitors?
No, they don't. I've been asking Bill maybe to do that. A lot of TV series and movies would like to use his town. And I can guarantee you there's about 20 buildings. I've been in every one of them. And in every building, there's got to be $3 or $4 million of stuff. So in the gun shop, in the post office, in the railroad depot, I mean, it's just a fantastic place. But he doesn't want anybody to use that yet. We're working on them.
Also in the Q&A, Mike Roach asks, who or where was or is the antique car collection you spoke of?
The antique car collection is at the town of Gateway. And the way to get to Gateway, if you go into Grand Junction, you hang a left-hand turn at Whitewater. And you go 42 miles through Unaweep Canyon. Spectacular. And you come to the town of Gateway. And then to top it off, when you leave Gateway, don't go back the way you came. Go through the San Miguel and Dolores River Canyon where they have the hanging flumes. And that'll take you over to Nucla and then Telluride. One of the most spectacular trips in all of Colorado. And John Hendricks is a great guy. I've given a number of talks out there, and it's just a fantastic place.